can start playing in the meantime. Think about the midterm. I mean, at least tentative date. Sending on Piazza and see if people that are not here have any issues. But in the meantime, I suggest it either in the later stage of what do we have here in October, later part of October, or what should we say? Essentially, I think we can leave by itself maybe the time until October 15th. So in these 2 weeks and the first week of November, it will maybe be good days. So if somebody wants to throw, I know that I promised to make a vote, and I will, but to get a first impression about the dates that will be bad for most of you, or good for most of you.
Is it going to be in-class exam or online?
Probably in class. Maybe both. I'm not sure if I have to do both. I prefer to do in class, and then I can interact with the students. So even students that normally don't come to class, I do recommend. I don't know if I have to do in class. If yes, then I don't care. We'll use maybe Examity and do it, but it will be in the same time anyhow. So we need to pick a slot of, say, 2 hours, that is, and one of the class times, maybe Thursday. I mean, nobody seems very to be very opinionated about any dates that you know that are bad. So what should we take? To see Thursday. What do you think about Thursday 27? Thursday 27 for the people here. No horrible deadline. A lot of 2 other midterms that are already set for this date. Something terrible.
Yes, I can't make it for 27 Thursday.
Okay. Do you think that whatever reasons that you have to that apply for you, you don't have to say? Is this something that other students do you think have? Okay, so we'll solve the issue with you. So tentatively, October 27 midterm. People here, yeah.
I think the last day to drop a course is October 30th. So if the exam is a little earlier than that, that would be good. Sure. Like
I mean, I can do it on the 27th if somebody said, I need an answer ASAP. Then I usually, I can provide an answer if it's crucial. But I don't care. I thought that here I have higher chance to hit other midterm.
How long does it take to grade an exam?
As usual, 80% of the exam takes 20% of the time, obviously. Yeah, I don't care. Anybody has an opinion? 20 versus 27? 27. Okay, 27, and if somebody needs an answer because it's a crucial decision.
Is the question very similar to the homework, since like homeworks take longer time than 2 hours to solve them?
It would be usually there are a few easy, a few hard. So
2 hours enough?
Listen to, I'll plan it for 1 hour 15, and I'll take some time at the beginning of the meeting to explain and go over the question with everybody. So hand wave about, because
How many sessions do you need?
usually about 4. I mean, it's depending how many sub-questions or so, but usually it will be about 5, and you have to pick 4, something like this. Listen, okay, so tentatively we are having the midterm. Very good. Okay. Questions about anything before we continue with our Delaunay/Voronoi experiments? Excellent. Sound-wise, people on Zoom can hear me as usual. I hope that. Okay. So I was able to control myself somehow, not to make too many GIFs for today. We talked about one algorithm to compute Voronoi diagrams that we mentioned today, which was meditate about one particular point, try to build the cell of this particular site, this particular point, how I'll create a bisector that separates between this point and every other point, every other site. Look at bisectors, the line that is going just in the middle of the distance between them, all the points that are equal distance. I compute all these half planes, and you know how to compute intersection of half planes in n log n time. And if I'll do it for every face, it will take altogether n square log n. And we will mention it today, various of the many properties that we are going to use, in particular the empty disk property that was re-mentioning. Look at every vertex and grow a disk from this vertex of the Voronoi diagram, your equidistance, to 3 points, 3 sites. And this disk is empty from any other points. Now, we'll see that sometimes, but not always, if I'll connect these 2 sites by a segment, sometimes, not always, if I'll connect them, then they form a diagonal, they form a diametral pair. This segment that I create is the diameter of this circle. Right? It's the 2 furthest point of this empty circle, but not always. And you'll see much more of it later. Okay, but however, for every pair of subpoints that are neighbor, that does mentioning here in Voronoi diagram, just we'll use this again and again. For every pair, there is one empty circle. Again, not necessarily the diameter between them, but there is one empty circle that is. Of course, the bisector is the same distance of these 2 points, so the center will be on the bisector, but the circle will be empty of any other points. We'll go over it again and again. Okay, and we can construct the Voronoi diagram in this way by the n square. Sorry, I'm running through the slides to where we were. We talked about barycentric coordinates, right? About how in triangulation, how do I give weights to the 3 vertices? I'll compute the area for a point, a pixel inside. These are 3 vertices. You're doing some fragment programming. You'd like to give a color or height or reflectivity or shading to this point by interpolating the properties of the 3 vertices that this pixel is in. And what your hardware is extremely good in computing is computing the 3 weights, alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, which are the ratio between the area of each triangle. Again, the rule of what is the weight of vertex 2. I look at the area of the triangle that doesn't touch this vertex. Out of the 3 triangles, the one that doesn't touch this vertex. This is the area of vertex 2 divided by the overall area. And that would be the barycentric coordinate. In particular, if I just use the alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, and look at the sum of V1, the xy location of V1, times its weight, plus V3 times its weight, plus V2 times its weight, there I'll get exactly this point. And obviously, because I'm just summing up areas of these 3 triangles, I expect the sums to be equal to 1. But here is a point that I forgot to mention last time, and I should have. What happens if the sum of these 3 triangles is larger than 1?
It's P outside
Exactly. That's how we know that one of the ways to know that P is outside this triangle. I mean, I still define the triangle whose vertex is P3 and each edge is V1, V2. Similarly for the other two edges. And I sum up these areas, and it turns out to be larger than the area of the original triangle. Conclusion, that's one way to know that a point is outside the triangle. Another way to know if a point is outside the triangle or not is, of course, by checking orientation. I can ask, is this point on the correct side of this half plane? Is on the correct side of this half plane and in the correct side of this half plane? Which you can ask if I'm going from V1, given that the point will be in counterclockwise order if the triangle is kept properly, which is the case if you are designing a DCL data structure. If you're going from V1, from V2, and then to P. Left term, the same here, the same here. Yet another way to check if you're inside the triangle. If you are already holding a moment, here is a bunch of points. P1, P2, P3, yada, yada. And I'm looking at sigma of alpha I pi, where sigma of alpha I is 1, namely a convex combination. And all the alpha i's are positive. Yeah, and for the recording, I'll have to use different marker, sigma. So I have a set of points, and I'm looking at all the convex combination of give these points some weight, and as long as these weight sums to 1. What is the shape that I'm generating when I'm running over all the combination of weights that satisfies this combination? Yeah, ignore me. Just help. You're looking at, you have a set of points P1 dot 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 Pn. P1 dot 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 Pn. You decide about values of the alpha i's. You're just making sure that the sum of them is 1. And they're all positive. And you look at the sum, vector sum. Each pi has its xy, xyz if you wish. And you look at all those sums. What are you getting geometrically? The convex hull. You're essentially generating, not surprisingly, you're generating each and every point that lives inside the convex hull. That makes sense, which is why we call such a sum of combination a convex combination of weights. That's exactly each and every point inside the convex hull. There's various ways to convince yourself, for example, triangulate it and run the sum for each vertex of the triangles. One of the ways. Okay, we talked about algorithm to triangulate set of points in general. Just keep adding segments as long as you can. We talked about good quality triangulation, not there yet. Wanted to have a triangulation where the smallest angle is as large as possible, then the second smallest angle is as large as possible, and so on. The lexicographic order. Just to make sure, somebody from Zoom can tell me on the chat if you can hear me. Philip, Joseph, and Clayton. Yes, thank you. Great. And something that we'll keep rehashing in Delaunay triangulation would be the notion of empty circle. We'll have 2 points or 3 points, and we look at circles that go through these 2 points or 3 points. And again, I'm not making distinction between the disk and the circle here. still when I'm saying the disks that go through 2 points. Think about a circle that go through these 2 points and fill it up for this disk, just shortening. Okay, and I'll actually have better figures to demonstrate what it is. You just see the Voronoi diagram and you see the Delaunay triangulation, and you already get good hint about the relationship between them. You see the point, you see the faces of the Voronoi diagram in red, and you see that I'm connecting by an edge every 2 faces that are next to each other, and it will happen to be the Delaunay triangulation. And I think that in some of the slides I corrected it, but in some of the slides I used the term DEL, and I corrected it to be DT, Delaunay triangulation. It's the Delaunay triangulation. Quick reminder of Thiele's theorems. If I watch, say, I'll draw 2 lines. I'm living in the plane. I draw 2 lines. I keep walking with respect to these lines, and I'm asking what is the angle that I'm forming with my hands. Then closer to these 2 lines, I'll have to increase this angle. The closer I get, need to increase this angle. And a bit more surprisingly is that as long as I'm walking along a circle, oh yeah, almost forgot it, God forbid, that as long as I am walking along the circle, going away, of course, is increasing the angle, is decreasing the angle, getting closer, decreasing the angle by which I watch it. But as long as I'm keeping this angle and I'm walking along this circle that these 2 points define, I'll block it for a moment. That as long as 2 points are on the same circle, the angle stays the same. It's important because we'll talk a lot today about this experiment of I'll keep 2 nails on the circle and try to push it from one direction. So one half sector of the circle will become smaller and smaller, and the other one will become larger and larger. But all this time I keep the circle passing through this pair of points. So this will be Thiele's theorems. If you can get closer to an edge in the triangulation, and then you are increasing at least one of the angles of the triangulation. Try to keep every triangle so that if some oracle told you this will be an edge of your triangulation, and now you have to pick out of many other edges, which one will be the other point that will form the triangle, told you that it's an edge, so it is inside one of the triangle because it's triangulation. Where should these other points be? Well, I'll try to make this angle as large as possible. We want all the angles to be as large as possible. Okay, here's my new animation. Looked better on my home monitor, but you can still see what's going on. So the main tool in our toolbox is edge flipping. We'll pick about an edge, and when we'll think about an edge of the triangulation, a triangulation somebody gave us and ask us, is this a good triangulation or not? And what I'll do is this edge is is considered. Maybe I will make some local changes. What I'm worried about are the 4 angles at which I see the quadrilateral over here. Somehow it comes with good justification, but somehow I will not think about the angle A and C. Instead, I'll ask, what is the angles but which these 4 edges are seen? And I'll say, you know what? Look, keep all the circles that are nailed to A and D, this is indeed an edge, and ask the other 2 points of this quadrilateral, because I'm just thinking very locally. Plenty of other triangles, I don't care. Think about an edge, think about the two triangles that are near this edge. We will not think about adding an edge to start with. We'll think about there is a triangulation, is it a good one or not? The number of triangles is the same. We talked about it last time. Each face is divided into triangles. Is this edge of this triangulation is good when I think about good and bad in terms of the whole vector of angles that we saw in the previous slide? Answer, if you can place the circle that go through A and B in a way that it doesn't contain, the triangle that goes through A and D in a way that it doesn't contain these two anonymous vertices, then it is, and no any other data points, but it will be only these 2 points that I care for. If I can make this circle empty of other data points, great. In particular, I can move it all the way so it touches either A or either C and keeps the other of the 4 outside. On the other hand, if your edge is arranged so that there is a cycle that contains both other 2 vertices, it's bad. So you'll want to flip it. You want to move from this diagonal to this diagonal. And what I'm trying to demonstrate with this animation is that if this circle contains one of these 2 vertices, I can arrange it so it contains both. It's either is this empty circle, or does it contain one other point? And what I was trying to show in this little animation is that in this little animation, you see my points A, B, C, D, and you also see the Voronoi diagram of these 4 points, A, B, C, D. And I decided about looking at circles that go through A, C, and D, and just the points D is moving left and right somehow. And I keep watching on these circles that go through A, B, C, and I arrange the animation so that at some point it contains these 4 points, B, and at some location it doesn't contain this point. And look at the Voronoi diagram. It goes through some combinatorial change at some moment. Do you see it? At which moment does the Voronoi diagram change? When does this change happen exactly? When this?
When the second point enters the circle.
The second point enters the circle, which, in other words, when I have these 4 points co-circular, then exactly my Voronoi diagram changes. And if I assume general position, I don't have 4 points that are co-circular. Then let's look at the Voronoi diagram right now. Can I make it freeze? Can I make it freeze, please? Let's look at the Voronoi diagram at this point. So you see 2 faces that in the Voronoi diagram of B and D, B and C, that of course you cannot read, B and C. I need to do it again. Now my Voronoi diagram looks like this. A and C, in this scenario, their 2 faces touch each other. They are neighboring. What about the 2 faces of B and C? They are not. What our rule says about Delaunay triangulation, you want to connect neighboring faces. A and C are neighbor at this point, suggesting that this will be indeed part of the Delaunay triangulation. What about the empty circle property? Yeah, that's exactly because B is outside the circle. Why do I need to switch it? Why will I stop using this edge? the moment that why is this becoming a forbidden edge? The moment that because which edge did I use? Why does the vertical edge as a Delaunay edge is stop being is desired right now? That's still legit. Yes, I should use the vertical edge between A and C, but I should stop using the edge from A to C right now. That's not the image right now. I'm asking about the edge that connects A to C. What happens to my circle through A, B, and C at this moment? At this moment, it will include A, B, and A, B, C, D. Apologize. What will happen when you see it like this? My circle will contain the third point inside it. What does it imply from Talas? How is Talas appears in the game? Because this edge did not change. Somebody needs to watch this edge. Who is watching this edge out of the two possible triangulation? One possible to watch this edge is that the point D will watch it, if the green is my Delaunay triangulation. One other possible of another guard that watches the very same edge is to look at the other possible location of the edge, or the flip, like so, and then who watch this single edge? Now it's A that watches this edge. Why do I say that why triangulation is good, one is bad? Right now it's an empty triangle, meaning that if I will try to make with this B watch the very same edge, I'm going outside the circle. Therefore, the angle that I watch the very same edge will increase. Being outside the circle, the angle at which I'll watch AD will decrease. Smaller angle, we don't like small angle, we want the angle to be big, getting into the angle, making any points on the circle that will watch BD, in particular A, that will watch it, will increase the angle at which I see this segment. And the same goes for the other four angles that watch this segment, that watch the other edges of the quadrilateral. Cool? So that's the idea behind it. Empty circles, good. Circles that have more points inside them that are not empty, meaning that there is something to correct, namely that we should flip an edge. If you start from a triangulation and you see that the circle that any triangle defines is not desired, that it contains an edge, you should switch it. Okay, question. The center of the circle, D, what does it move on? Let me see if I can increase it. Look at the center of the disk. What does it? Remember, this disk all the time touches A and D. The circle all the time, the circle all this time is defined by A and C. What does the center of the circle moves along? All the circles that go through A and C. I have a set of circles, and all of them are going through A and C. Where is the center of this disk going to as I'm moving? It's the line between A and C, and in particular, I mean, there are, just say it more. what is this? It's a bisector between A and C. These are all set of disks that, oh, by the way, they're also going through D, but in particular, all these set of disks are between A and C that are points that are fixed in my animation. D is the one that is moving, meaning that all I'm changing is, because what we said, if I have a circle, if I have a circle that are 2 points below it, then the center of the circle is equal distance from this pair of points. What about in what Voronoi cell this center must be? It must be, if it's empty of other points, it's empty of B, then who was its nearest neighbor? C, D, and A, implying this must be a vertex of the Voronoi diagram. So that shows, this little animation shows the whole relationship between how the Delaunay triangulation and the Voronoi diagram connects and why the duality plays into the game. Now, let me demonstrate one of these surprising, I think, very unintuitive properties of Delaunay. So we think about Delaunay as, look at the Voronoi diagram, connect every pair of neighboring faces. But strange things can happen when I'm doing it. Right now, this segment makes sense. What happens to it in terms of the Voronoi diagram? It spends half of its life, exactly half of its life. This Delaunay segment spends half of its life inside the cell of C, and it spends half of its life inside the cell of A. And it connects A and C. So that's not confusing. And in this case, by the way, A and C are diametral pair. But let's look about the other Delaunay triangulation. I did an edge flip. Didn't do it, I'm just showing you the Delaunay triangulation. GeoGebra is a great tool to get intuition. Just go and play with this. To give you this applet, or do it yourself. You'll just create a bunch of points and ask for the Delaunay triangulation. So this is a Delaunay edge. Is this connecting two neighboring faces? Yes. The face of D is this one. Face of B is this one. And they share the border. That's good. Yeah, it doesn't surprise that the center is not on the edge, because the center, the circle only cares about A, B, and D. And it's not relevant for them. And we said they stopped being neighbors to each other. So the segment, which is a Delaunay segment, is completely justified, but it doesn't have these properties that it spends half of its life in the cell of D and half of its life of the cell of B. It spent part of its life in the cell of A. It's not an issue, but it does make it a bit surprising, right? It does. It's just to counter our intuitive that the segment must spend all its life inside the two cells that define it. Once again, I have two sites. I connect them because they are neighboring in the Voronoi diagram, but they spend part of their but the segment itself might be outside. How is this not really a contradiction? Well, because this will be a Delaunay triangle with A, those these guys, and the disk through. How do I know that the disk that this circle defines does not contain C? Because the circle of A, D, and C does contain B, so I'll keep A and D touching it. I'll let C loose, making this circle a bit smaller, and I have to make it a bit smaller. It will be included inside this original circle. That's important. Now, to make this circle touches B, I have to give up on touching C. So it's a smaller circle. So this is, among these four sides, this is still the empty circle. Okay, but what do we need to prove in this case is that summarize, every Delaunay edge Q is for every Delaunay edge Pi Pj, there is a circle that is empty of any other data points going through Pi and Pj exactly. And of course, its center is on the, by the center of the circle on the Voronoi edge that connect them. Okay, so if you see an edge of the Delaunay triangulation, this edge must be associated with with some empty circle that goes through it. But this circle doesn't, but I'm definitely not committing that the circle that Pi Pj is the diameter, I'm not committing that this circle will be empty. So actually, I take it back. I'm not committing that the center of this circle will be in the Voronoi of these 2 points. Okay, it might be in the Voronoi face of another point. But a lot of good things, a lot of good properties happen. So every edge, there is an empty circle. And Pi Pj might be the diameter of this circle. That was the first case that we saw, that the empty circle, that the whole Delaunay edge was passing beyond the empty circle. That I will not attempt to start again. But it's not always the diameter. And for every triangle in the Delaunay triangulation, the unique circle between them must be empty of any other points, at least in its interior. If you assume general position, then it is completely disjoint. If you don't assume general position, then maybe you have 4 co-circular points that are all on the boundary of this circle. And that's, by the way, the only case that the Delaunay triangulation is not unique. Right? If I have 4 points on a circle, 4 points that are all on a circle, then how should I triangulate them in keeping the empty circle property? The empty circle refers to the interior. How should I triangulate them in keeping the circles empty? But that's one way. And the circle that defined by 3 does not contain this 4 in its interior, and the other diagonal still satisfied. So that's the only case that the Delaunay triangulation is not unique. Okay, so we are getting closer, but there is something suspicious about having the Delaunay edge that is connecting to faces that are not neighbors. If I would only connect faces that are neighbors, then obviously 2 such edges cannot cross each other. But if it's not all the way inside inside these 2 faces, it goes to visit some other faces. How do I know that I'm not connecting some other pair and this other pair crosses this edge? It requires a proof. I'll skip it right now. But essentially, you want to say that, and I'll hand wave a bit. Maybe I'll make it a proof. Here is the Delaunay edge, Pi Pj. This edge is in the Delaunay triangulation because Pi Pj are neighbors. The faces of Pi and Pj are neighbors. So here is a common border. Between Pi and Pj. There is an empty circle that touches Pi and Pj. But in this edge is fully inside the Voronoi. This edge is entirely inside the Voronoi cell of Pi, of P of Pj. Okay, the diameter of this segment is entirely inside this segment. Similarly, this part is fully in the face of pi. And now, if I'll try to squeeze into it, lots of hand waving, let's assume that now I'm connecting pk to pl somewhere, a segment that crosses it, because I have two other Voronoi faces that are also decided to be neighbors. Then you'll see that what's happened with the edges of this other edge that I drew somewhere, somehow either pk must be either in the Voronoi face of pi or in the Voronoi space of pj. Okay, meaning that I will not have this scenario completely handled. The edges of the two, the edges of pk and pl belongs to another Voronoi face. Will violate the faces of the original pair and vice versa. So that I don't have a very clean, compact way to say it. Anyhow, we get a triangulation. So how do we generate? The big message that I'm trying to convey today is really why empty triangles. Why being empty? Because of Talas. Empty circle, good. And empty circle, meaning as big angles as I could. So how do I create the Delaunay triangulation? One way is first create the Voronoi diagram. What do you know at this step of this moment at the course? To create the Voronoi diagram, I can create every face individually by intersection of half planes. It's efficient if I only care for one face. It's not very efficient if I care for n faces, because then it will take n square log n. The textbook contains a fortune algorithm that does something similar to the line sweep of the points, and somehow as the line sweep moves, build in n log n the Voronoi diagram. But there are faster algorithms with the same asymptotic running time, much faster in practice than this order n log n, much easier to implement. And that's what we are going to discuss, that don't try to build the Voronoi diagram directly. It's still a great algorithm if you want to compute the Voronoi diagram, but instead, what we'll do is compute the dual graph of the Voronoi diagram, which is exactly the Delaunay. Delaunay and Voronoi are dual to each other. What we'll do is build the Delaunay triangulation. That's our next topic. How do I create the Delaunay triangulation directly? And in homework 3, I'm asking you to generate a very easy exercise. If you have the Delaunay triangulation of set of sides, I'm asking you, how do you build the Voronoi diagram? You can do it, linear time. So we will start with n to the fourth algorithm for computing the Delaunay triangulation, and then improve it. So just to make sure that I can compute the n to the fourth algorithm, what will I do? I'll select a triple of points. And asking, is the triangle of P1, P2, P3, is this going to be in the Delaunay triangulation or not? How do I know? I can ask if I can improve the angles by an edge flip, kind of, but or I can check directly if create the angle, create a circle through these 3 points, check every other point. If they are all outside, this triangle is in the Delaunay. If you have any points inside, then it is not in the Delaunay, because triangulate it and then you start edge flipping, you'll see that you can improve things. So again, just check if every circle is empty or not. Here is a slightly better algorithm, and it actually works very well in practice. Josh Levine has his PhD on shape reconstruction and shape analysis, and he was using a lot of triangulation and was called for a lot of triangulation, and that's very similar to codes that they were using. It's extremely important topic in shape analysis. So here is one algorithm that says the following. Start with any triangulation. And I'll remind you, how do I create the original triangulation? Do you remember the algorithms that we discussed 2 days ago? You have a set of points, create a triangulation, no qualities constraint. Create a triangulation of this set. How do you do it?
Do the convex hole and then connect all of them to points.
So I start with finding the points. I start from finding the I start by finding all the points in the convex hull, connect them, that's part of the triangulation, and then pick one of them, connects to the other, that's a set of triangles, probably not a good quality, and then if my set of points are convex, I'm done. If I have other data points, then if it's inside the triangle, I'll add it, connect it to its neighbors, and connect it to its neighbors, create 3 triangles, and continue. OK, that will be very similar to our Delaunay algorithm. Notice that there is a really important point here that we need to resolve. If I want efficient algorithm, when I'm adding a point, when a point is added, there are lots of triangles that are built that are already in this triangulation. You're adding one more point. You need to figure out what is a triangle that contains this point in logarithmic time, hopefully. So we need the data structures that will tell us how do I find a new point that is added, what is a triangle it is on. But let's think one step after that. I created the Delaunay triangulation of all the points. Some other application is using it for interpolation, for example. I want to estimate the interpolation. I have applications that we work on. I have points that are rain gauges, asking me what's the level of water in each rain gauge, and I want to interpolate to know how much water falls on this point by interpolating, say, the rain gauges in the triangle it defined. It's a popular method for interpolating values of functions over whatever applications you want, graphical applications. You want to ask what is the color of each such pixel. You want to do some operations of geographic information on the terrain to ask where should you place energy panels, sunroof panels, solar panels, and you need the geography of the terrain. Basically, you have to use to answer similar questions all the time. Given the triangulation, and given preprocess it, given a triangulation, so on my hand ready today, given a triangulation, think about it, meditate on it, do what we are doing with what's the equivalent of a binary search trees for a set of keys. For a set of keys, we can put them in a sorted array, if it's one-dimensional, or in a search tree or a skip list, so that I'll give you a point, a value q, and you'll tell me what is a data point that is the closest to it, which is very easy in 1D. Just keep them sorted. You can log n do it. But triangles are nasty. They don't have their simple order between them, and I still need to be practical. I need to build such a data structure so that I can answer it in order log n. Why am I doing such a big change of the topic suddenly when I'm in the middle of building of describing the algorithm? There is a very good reason, because I need it for the algorithm itself. And what the algorithm will do as part of the processing would be to build such a data structure so I can add when I'm adding a new point, I'll change the data structure to reflect the new triangles that are created. Add a new point, find in which triangle it is. What's the difference between this and the naive triangulation that we suggested earlier that just gave you any such application would be that I'll make sure that the triangulation that I have are Delaunay triangulation. I'll make sure that this triangulation that I have is Delaunay triangulation. So the way we're thinking about is when you're adding a new point, start fixing the triangulation. So it used to be, before you're adding a point, it used to be Delaunay. Maybe I want to show you this notation. It used to be a Delaunay triangulation, and I want to keep it Delaunay after the approximation. So I'm adding a new point, and as you see, start to do edge flipping until I'm getting indeed a new Delaunay. So yeah, we already discovered it. That was it, drawing the Voronoi diagram and takes the dual, just having a slide on it, build the Voronoi diagram, connect every pair of faces that are neighboring the Voronoi diagram. And if one can be computed in log in whatever time, you can compute the other one in order one. In the homework, I ask various questions that needs n log n time algorithm. Assume for all of them that you can compute Voronoi diagram or Delaunay triangulation in n log n. OK. And our beloved property would be the empty disks property. OK. So yeah, we discussed the correctness, and we discussed this one. And now here is a way to start thinking about the algorithm. I'll start with the bounding triangle of all the sites and add one site after another. Here I added pi. What do? Connect pi to its neighbors. And if I am just done with any triangulation, at this point I'll stop. If I want Delaunay triangulation, I should check, hey, there is a new edge over here. There is a new pair of triangles over here. Should I flip this edge and improve all the angles that are involved in it? That is. How do I know should I improve it? I need to ask, is the other vertex inside the circle that this point participate or not? So I added pi. I figure out that pi generated 3 new edges. Again, I still owe you how do I know which triangle pi is, but I found it. I connect it to the 3 vertices of the existing triangulation. And I ask, hey, pi, together with this edge, is this circle empty, or does it include the vertex of the twin triangle, the other triangle on the other side of this edge? Well, there is no such triangle here on the other side of this edge right now. This circle is empty. Great. This here, as far as I know, this edge does not violate the Delaunay triangulation as much as I know at the moment. Let's ask for the other edges. PI, look at one. I created these two edges, create a new triangle that wasn't there earlier. Look at the circle that these 3 points defined. I need to know actually if there is any data points inside this circle, but it's not what I'm checking. I'm not checking each and every data point. I'm just checking what is the vertex on the other side of the edge of the triangle that I just generated. Just a single vertex. It used to be a Delaunay triangulation, so that would be sufficient. Before I did this guy, it was a Delaunay triangulation, so it's enough to look at new triangle, look at the other side of this edge, look at the vertex of this triangle. Is this inside the circle? Unfortunately, yes, but we know how to fix it. Flip. Flip. So what does flip mean? Looking always at two triangles, two neighboring triangles that shares an edge. Whom do I flip? I don't worry about anything that happens outside these two triangles that share an edge. I just delete this edge and use the other diagonal. So I flipped. I created two new triangles. I might resolve some of my problems, but maybe just created new ones. Because now there are new triangles, what should we do? Every time that you see a new triangle, check if each one of its edges is legit, is a legal edge, or should it be flipped? Yes, I will need to flip this edge as well. And voila, I'm done at this point. What do I do if a new point is on an existing edge? We had the same problem right here. I just connect it to the two vertices of the two triangles that it defines. Right? And I just created 4 new triangles. What should I do for each one of them? Check if you need to flip. OK. But there is a really important property that we are going to use, very interesting property. Once you flipped an edge, let's go back a bit. Look at PI and look at the new edge that I created, that I flipped. It is connected to PI. If I'll have another flip, it will be connected to PI as well. Every new edge that I'll create will be connected to PI. And to think about it, it's easier to go back to the Voronoi diagram and to say, I have some Voronoi diagram of maybe several points. And now, after, how is a new Voronoi diagram looks like when I'm adding P5 over here? There are 4 points that you don't see, and P5 is a new guy, and P5 will have its own Voronoi cell. P5 will have its own green Voronoi cell, and inside this Voronoi cell, P5 is neighbor to several points that are several of the previous sites. Right? In the new sites, here is P3, P2, P1, and P4, and their cells becomes neighbors to the cell of the newcomer P5. What does it tell us about the Delaunay triangulation? Back into, there are new neighboring relationship. So P5 will be in the new Voronoi diagram, in the new Delaunay triangulation, P5 will be a neighbor to each new face, new neighboring face that it creates. So it will be important when we'll ask to how many flips do I need to do. Can somebody tell me if I'll look at the triangulation and pick one of the vertices at random, what's the average number of neighbors that it have? It has. How many neighboring vertices does it have? Could be a lot for some vertex. Here is a set of sites, all on a circle. And here is PI here in the middle, the Voronoi diagram of PI with all these sites. Here is its Voronoi diagram, has a lot of edges, it has a lot of neighbors with all the data points. Right? So it might have a lot of neighbors, n-1, many neighbors. But if PI is just arbitrary point, is one of the data points in the Voronoi diagram, and I pick it at random, how many neighbors do I expect it to have?
6.
Excellent. It is 6. Most vertices have only 6 neighbors on average. Why? Because when you sum up the degrees of all the vertices, because of Euler, excellent point, because of Euler, the average degree of a node is 6, slightly less than 6. One of them actually has less than 6, has 5 or less. Why do I know it? Because the sum of the degrees smaller or equal than 6n minus 2. This minus 2 is important for one of the homework questions, by the way. But there is someone has degree of less than 6, and a lot of them have degree of no more than 6. I cannot have n nodes with degree 7, because then the average degree will be 7. So why is such a great news with respect to this algorithm? Because when I'm adding a new point, possibly I need to spend a lot of time doing all the edge flips. But after all the edge flips, I'm looking at the degree of this node, and the degree of this node is exactly the number of flips that I had to do. Every new flip creates an edge that connects to the new node. Following me? So how many flips do I need to do? No more than exactly the number of the degree of PI in the new triangulation. Now, remember what we did in the linear programming? We're going to do the same trick. In the linear programming, we said, here's a bunch of half planes. Here's a bunch of half planes. Here's a minimum, and the minimum doesn't care one bit. How did you add the half planes? At which order did you add? That's a minimum of this subset. And it defines only these 2 vertices, and it's will be the same at which order that you're adding, this backward analysis. Here we are going to do it in slightly different way. We're going to say, look at PI. We have slides coming about it. I'm just giving you a heads up. Look at this PI. You did a sequence of flips because you added PI. But the length of the sequence of flips is just the degree of PI in the new triangulation. So now imagine that after you added PI, you're picking one of the points at random and remove it, going back in history 1 point. What's the chance that you pick this point with such a high degree? 1 over n. What would be the average number of, or what will be the average degree of each one of the points that you are going to remove? 6. It means that if PI could be any of the points at random, then the average changes that will happen when I'm adding PI is only 6. 6 many flips. That will be the average degree of PI. OK, let's see where it's all going. So order of n squared will be too much. What we are going to do is, just in the linear programming, do incremental randomized algorithm. Pick all the points and create a random permutation. Same thing that we did in the linear programming. And by the way, to create some awkward situation, I'll start by, the algorithm will start by adding 3 artificial points that are not necessarily a data point. Just I want to make my algorithm simpler by not worried about adding a point that will be on the convex island that it has, that creates. I want to have the algorithm simple by assuming that every new point that I'll add will be inside a triangle of my triangulation. How would I agree? How can I make sure that every point of P1, P2, P3, all the way to Pn, each one of these points, when I'm adding it, will be in a triangle? Well, the trick will be I will add P minus 3. It's an artificial, it's point that I added. It's not a data point. Somewhere way up and to the left. And I'll add, it's a point that I added. And here is P of, actually to make it simply, it will be P of n minus 2. And P of minus 2 and P of minus 1. These are artificial points that I added. They don't disturb me. They helps everything. So when I start my algorithm, all my data points are inside this triangle. Okay, so every data point that I will add will be an existing triangle. And you'll still connect you'll still get the nice data for all these points. It doesn't disturb the algorithm. So that forms the bounding triangle which encloses all the sites. Add the sites one after the other at random and update the triangulation. But update the triangulation would mean not just make sure that it's a triangulation, make sure that it's Delaunay triangulation at every moment. Dual of Voronoi diagram of these points. So, and now if this site is inside an existing triangle, you already saw this animation. The site is in existing triangle. Find it somehow, connect the site to its vertices, and check there are 3 new triangles that were just generated. Check for each such triangle its neighboring triangle. In this scenario, of course, there is always a neighbor triangle, but it's very, very far point. So it's not really an issue. Check the neighboring triangle. Is this empty or not? If it's not empty, flip. We saw in the previous slide what were the circles that I checked. If it's on an edge, you created 4 new triangles instead of 3. Check if each one is legit. If not, then flip. To check if it is legit or not, once again, the main structures that you have for every triangle that you're looking at a triangle with a new point pi that was just added. You want to ask if the circle that pi and and the other 2 points that were just added, is this empty or not, but empty from whom? It's empty of any of the data points, but as we said, it's sufficient to ask, check the neighboring, the twin triangle of this edge. Not good. Need to flip. Agree? This point, the vertex of this triangle is inside this circle, flip this edge. On the other hand, if the vertex, the other vertex of this triangle, of the twin triangle, was outside the circle, then as far as I know, this edge doesn't need to be flipped. I don't need to worry about other data points because it used to be a good Voronoi diagram. Okay, so that was a high-level description of the algorithm. Let's start to squeeze some details. So flipping edges, just to have it on the slides, a new vertex PR is added. It definitely causes the addition of at least 2 new edges, probably 3 in this case, and 3 new triangles. Check if this edge is legal. What edge? This edge is legal. How do I check? Think about the circle that goes through these 3 points. checks the neighboring triangle, inside or outside. In this case, it's inside. Oops, sorry. In this case, it's inside, needs to switch. And as we saw in the case of, as we saw in the line sweep, every time that I have a new triangle, new neighboring relationship, check if there are legit, if the edge that is involved is legit or not. The edge that you just created, I know that it's legit. I'm not going to destroy this edge until possibly new points will be added. But as long as new points are not being added, I resolved something by the edge flip. The new edge that I just created definitely is not going anywhere, at least until PR+1 will be added. But on the other hand, this new edge that I created defines two new triangles, so I'll check if their new vertices needs to be flipped or not. Make sense? So it might cause a cascading effect. And it could be that every edge that I'll add will create n new cascading effect. I'll have to create n new edges every time that I add a vertex. Right? It's not very hard to think about an example where it could happen. Let's think about it in the Voronoi diagram setting. So I'll start by creating a semicircle, and I'll place n half many points on this circle. And I look at the Voronoi diagram. Easier to see it in the Voronoi diagram. Let's put P of n+1 here in the center of the circle. And what is the Voronoi diagram of all these guys? Between these 2 points, there is a bisector. Between these 2 points, there is a bisector. But the cell of Pn+1 is neighbor to all these cells. Agree? So in the Delaunay triangulation, Pn+1 is connected to all these guys. Where should I put Pn+2? Pn half. Sorry, that's Pn half +1. I already spent n half many points over here. I placed 1 point over here, and here, if I had the old Delaunay triangulation, Pn half +1 was added. It's neighboring of all of them, so in the Delaunay it needs to be connected to all of them, so I need to do at least n half many edge flips. Where should I put the next edge if I want to make the algorithm works very slowly? Where should I put the next vertex, the next data point? I want to show you that there is an example of a really bad order. In the linear programming question, we saw that there is an example that I can add the half planes one by one, and each one forces me to rearrange everything. What would be the equivalent here? I want to add 1 more point, and adding it will cause a lot of flips.
You put it slightly below n.
Forgive me, let's say that I'm putting n here so I will not run into fonts issue. I'll use 2 endpoints. So this is, I put endpoints over here, and this will be P of n+1. So my fonts are less of an issue, and P of n+2 is slightly below it. How do I know that it caused a lot of changes? What happened between these 2 guys, I don't care. But what is a new Voronoi cell of the newcomer? Somewhere around here, it touches all the existing Voronoi cell of the original set. So I need, again, another n changes. And so on. P of n+2, slightly below. Infinitely small. And I can do it n times, and it will cause altogether n square many changes. So why doesn't my algorithm, and of course, every new point will cause n many flips to correct all of it. Right? It will be, if you think about it, what is the scenario? You have P of n+1, which defines 1 triangle, and now Pn+2 is added. It is connected to its neighbors, obviously, But now I start to squeeze a sequence of edge flips that will end up by Pn plus 2 added to everybody. When I'm just adding Pn plus 2, I still don't know that this green edge, when I just added Pn plus 1, I still don't know that this edge is illegal. All I do is do my local change that will start by doing an edge flip of this guy, and this will cascade until I'll get to this one. Altogether, n plus 1. So how do I make sure that my algorithm does not run in n squared time at every iteration?
Randomize.
The random order. This was a very, very specific order that I had to do. Had I start with Pn plus 2 and then add these ones, it would be much, much simpler, as we will see. Just as in the linear programming example, if I would start inserting the two half planes by inserting these two ones, then the other ones don't have anything to complain with, and I don't need any changes. OK, one more example of edge flip. These two guys now are suspicious, might be flipped as well, and so on. So the expected number of edge flips during the course of the algorithm is at most 6n. How do I know? Because I'm asking what is the sum of the degrees, the number of, if I do an edge flip, it is connected to a new vertex. Every edge flip must be connected to the newcomer. And after all the edge flips, I'm getting a planar graph. Planar graph has Euler formula. It has, at most, these many edges. It's triangulation. Remember our calculation about triangulation? How many edges do I have in a triangulation? With n vertices or with n edges? We'll switch to half edges. So every triangle uses one half edge. But to make a triangle, I need 3 half edges. So the number of half edges that I'll create will be roughly 3 times the number of edges. Why is this only roughly? Because the outer face might use many more than 3 triangles. The outer face, that also have its own half edges, might have more than half edge, which is why there is always a vertex with degree 5 or less. OK. So number of flips, if you're a newer point connected and we are doing some number of flips, then every new flip connects to you as the new point. So the expected degree of ki, the degree of ki, would be 6 because of Euler. Because after the triangulation, we look at the triangulation. The triangulation doesn't care one bit about the order that the points were added. I don't know. When it came up, it was definitely brilliant and made was a strong impact algorithm. Lots of new ideas that are hidden in it. I think that it's quite brilliant. OK, let's give a promo of the data structure. Let's wait for next meeting. Don't need to push it. We need to speak about how the data structure, because this data structure is really useful. It's one of the outputs of the algorithm. It's not only the triangulation, it's also the data structure that we are using that will be excellent to answer other queries of, hey, I'm a query point, at which triangle am I? Thank you.